People that work or have worked in bikini waxing salons. What is the worst/most disturbing experience you've come across while giving someone a bikini wax? At one point in my aesthetics career, I did a lot of waxing, like 12 Brazilians a day. So I have seen and smelt some horrifying stuff. The most memorable WTF moment was while waxing a well-groomed sorority girl. She was utterly oblivious to the rank odor emanating from her junk. There was discharge. I pulled a strip from her lower labia near her opening, and what I can most accurately describe as the contents of a large Cadbury cream egg stuck to the edge of the strip and splattered on the wall behind me. She remained blissfully ignorant of the bacterial projectile. As someone without these parts, I do wonder how these things go unnoticed for so long. I guess out of sight, out of mind, but to an extreme degree. Because, you don't see it, it's true. Anyway, that was revolting. Moving on. Story 2. Not my story, but had a friend who did waxing for a while. She had a guy come in and request a waxing for his taint/butt area. When she did, the guy nut on release. It was obviously awkward and the guy apologized profusely. It was a no harm, no foul, but don't do it again situation. Well, of course he returned after some time and he nut again. They banned him from returning. Hey, if that's the wax the guy wants and the nutting is just a byproduct, that just kinda sucks for him. Obviously, can't be doing that. At the same time, he doesn't really have a choice from the sounds of it. Unlucky. Story 3. I have one. A girl came into my salon a month before she got married. She had never groomed her pubic hair and claimed to be a virgin. She wanted to be waxed right before her wedding. Completely natural, right? I recommended she get a wax now and another before the big day, since there was no way of knowing how her prized lady bits would react to the wax. She declined and set an appointment 3 days before her wedding. Fair enough. When she came back, I was not prepared for the amount of hair she had. It was unusual for a fair-skinned blonde client to have long, coarse black hair. But whatever, it's my job. So I trim her up, clean her, and prepare to wax her. Again, she had an ungodly amount of dark hair. Even trimmed, her skin was barely visible. So after inspecting her and not seeing any issues, I begin waxing. I crap you not, she had skin tags and perturbing moles that I did not see before starting. To get to the point, I pulled a strip from her labia area and pulled off about 20 skin tags. She yowled, the entire salon heard. And then she started bleeding, like gushing blood. We know how to handle bleeding pores, but I had never heard of this. So we're both screaming and crying, and I have to call her an ambulance because she would not stop bleeding. I thought I almost murdered her. Maybe not the grossest story, but it was traumatic. I changed professions soon after. I imagine her wedding night wasn't magical either. Edits to answer questions. What I perceived to be skin tags could have very well been HPV. That being said, her client info form indicated she had no known illnesses or conditions. Also, I've waxed a few warts before. Sometimes they tear or even bleed, but they don't come off intact the way these did. Yes, obviously the room and equipment were fully sanitized after the incident. True, an ambulance is expensive here in the States, but it was a necessary call. She was still bleeding heavily when the EMTs arrived, and it's the responsibility of the business from what I understand. I wasn't fired, I didn't get in trouble, but I did feel guilty. So I voluntarily stood before my state board and told them what happened. It was fine, no repercussions. I never heard from her again, though we did attempt to contact her to check in, but nada. Her hygiene seemed fine. A skin tag is a fleshy deposit of excess skin. They have a ton of causes, but they're often in places that sweat or rub a lot. Common on larger people, though average and thin people get them too. They usually aren't painful unless they're messed with. Like trying to pop it like a pimple, scratching, attempting to remove it, stuff like that. Unfortunately, it sounds like both the client and the esthetician, I don't know what to call it. Either way, either person was traumatized here. I'm sorry for both of them that they had to go through that. Just an unlucky situation, it seems. Story 4. I think the toughest thing I've ever seen as a waxer was a minor getting a Brazilian. Yes, her parents knew and signed a consent form, but didn't clean herself properly. Looked like she had diarrhea and wiped back to front, with super thick hair, and I got stuck pulling a labia strip. It was my fault. I didn't cleanse and poke around thoroughly enough before I started, but I almost went to go get a coworker because I thought I was going to need help pulling it off. Client was a champ though. Bore with me throughout the whole process. Definitely the toughest experience I've had, beyond the 400+ pound ladies I see. I've been a body waxer for 5 years now, and we are a special breed. It's almost like nursing when it comes to putting on the professional face when we're confronted with something gross. But to be honest, it's really not that bad of a profession. Smells, yes. Some excretions, yes. Blood, yes. Even poop, sometimes yes. But you're there to do a job, and if you're good enough at it, you push through it. These people are opening up an incredibly vulnerable part of their body to a complete stranger. The last thing I want to do is scar them for life by making a face or a rude comment. So shake some extra powder on there and keep laying those strips. It'll be over soon enough. Story 5. I used to be an esthetician, and I'll never forget the first Brazilian I ever gave a girl. I was inexperienced, so to get to the butt area, I made her go on all fours. After I powdered up her butt, I was holding her cheeks open and closely examining the direction of the hair growth, so I would know which direction to spread the wax, as I was trained to do. Then all of a sudden I see her butthole opening and closing and opening and closing, and then bam! She fully farted in my face. She was super embarrassed and said it was an air bubble. Didn't smell like one though. Story 6. My waxy lady and I talk about this all the time. She said girls come in on their periods all the time. She doesn't mind as long as there's a tampon in place and it's clean. Some ladies don't comply. She's seen women who haven't properly wiped their BH after taking a dump. But the weirdest thing she saw was a girl who was born without a butthole. I don't know who, why, how, what, where, but yeah. That's weird. Unfortunate, mostly. I hope whoever that girl ends up with isn't into butt stuff, for their sake. That just seems like a horrifically unfortunate thing to find out. Story 7. I got a full Brazilian as a dude. Female esthetician works on me. My girlfriend is waiting in the lobby. After she's about halfway through the front, she asks if she can ask a slightly unprofessional question. I say, sure. She says she's never seen a circumcised dong before, but didn't ask me any actual question, just made the comment. The worst part was, the walls were so thin, so pretty much the whole lobby heard the conversation. Okay, this is kind of funny to imagine though. The whole like, can I ask you an inappropriate question or like a not completely work-related question? And then you're like, okay, sure, where is this going? And then it's not a question at all. Just like, yeah, I've never seen a circumcised dong before. And you're just sitting there like, okay, cool. Story 8. I was once the gross customer by pure accident. My former girlfriend liked the idea of shaving your chest, etc. The less hair I got on my body, the better, blah blah blah. I bled so heavily out of every damn pore on my chest that the lady stopped mid-session. After the bleeding had stopped somewhat, I helped clean up, paid, and left. The bruises were visible for several weeks. I never did try waxing again. Story 9. Esthetician here. My worst experience was a full Brazilian wax on an extremely obese woman. I was relatively new to the field and lacked the experience to deal with this type of situation. I couldn't get the angles right. I felt so awkward asking her to hold her stomach that blanketed over her kitty, and her legs were just too large for me to actually reach the area. She was unable to bend the legs properly. I think at one point I lost wax between a fold and had to pry the skin/hair apart to apply the strip. I remember my back hurting so much from the way my body was positioned, frantically trying to finish on time for my next client, and so much sweat. Both of us. It was the dead middle of summer. I'm sure a seasoned esthetician may have been able to handle this better, but that's my worst experience. Story 10. I have a story from a client of mine about a previous coworker. So I have this client coming in for a Brazilian. As soon as we were in the room, she warns me that the last time she was in, she didn't like her experience, and let me know that she had her button pierced. I was like, cool, no problem, thanks for the heads up. Let's try to make this better. I figured she lifted or bruised, so we got started and there's the piercing. Well, halfway through, she starts talking, and I was like, I hope this has been a better experience for you. I wouldn't want a repeat of last time. She explains that it wasn't the waxing, it was the waxer. Apparently, when she explained her piercing to the previous esthetician, she put the towel back and patted the pierced button without gloves, saying how she had never seen one of those before. Under no circumstance are you to directly touch a client there. The woman was not impressed and refused to return until she was sure the previous esthetician was no longer employed. So it's not really my experience, I just felt bad for my client. Some people really are just too comfortable about touching, and especially like that. That super sucks for the client. I feel really bad for them, seriously. Just because you have a piercing there or something does not mean you're asking to be touched there by everyone who sees it. Especially not in a waxing situation, that's just weird. Mind your own business, people. Story 11. I'm not a waxer, but one time I was getting waxed at a new place and thought things were going just fine. I was making small talk with the esthetician while all spread-eagled on the table. She was facing away getting her supplies ready, and she started sniffling, and I thought she might be crying. I was like, okay, I know it's been a while, but I can't be that shocking. And I asked her, hey, are you okay? And she turned around just full-on ugly snot crying and explained to me that the appointment before mine was her recent ex-boyfriend's new girlfriend. I have never ever read a bigger oof than this one. Story 12. I currently work at a waxing center and I have had many foul experiences. I love my job, but sometimes I wonder why I still do this. A new client had come in for a full Brazilian. She was no older than 17 and it was her first time doing it. I was trying to make her as comfortable as possible and explain everything I was doing. So we finish the front and I tell her to flip over and hold her butt cheeks so I can do the butt strip. I apply the wax over her butthole and I guess she wasn't expecting it, because she farted and blew a bubble with the wax. It popped so loudly that it echoed in the room. I had never seen anything like that happen before, and I could see she was humiliated. I was embarrassed for her. I immediately turned around and started fumbling with anything I could get my hands on to pretend I didn't see what just happened. I never saw that girl again. Story 13. Not Bikini, but rather a Brazilian wax story. I once worked as a camera operator for an instructional video for estheticians learning how to do various waxing techniques. The male model for the Brazilian wax demonstration had extremely saggy and sensitive balls, which he apologized for prior to disrobing. Now, picture this. He was in a tabletop position on his hands and knees with a well-powdered butt, balls drooping halfway down his thigh. The instructor was doing her talking bit before powdering said butthole, during which the model casually reached down under the table, grabbed a towel, and molded it between his hands into as high standing of a wad of towel that he could. He pushed the towel lump back along the table and through his knees. Upon bumping up against his testes, it pushed the saggy sack back along the line of a pendulum, much like a person on a swing set pulled back, about to be given their initial shove. Alas, there was no releasing the balls to the forces of gravity. Instead, he casually reached around the back of his legs, picked up the soon-to-be hairless pair, and perched them on the towel mountain. The instructor continued on her script, talking into the camera, none the wiser. It was a completely mundane but extremely bizarre scene. I left the cameras running, zoomed in on his butt, mind you, and walked out into the hallway to collapse in laughter. This is the legend of Towel Mountain. Story 14. There are two that I will never forget. 1. The seemingly normal, average 20-something-year-old girl who apparently had no idea that her kitty/butthole needed to be cleaned. A lot of women are kind of gross, but this one, ooh, she had her period, had an insane amount of discharge, and looked like she never wiped her butt. When I did the strips on her butt crack, there was poop on them afterwards. 2. The old man who would come in for the Brazilian laser treatments. He was pretty weird from the get-go, like an older, flamboyant Jeffrey Rush. The first 2 times he came in, he got hard while I was lasering him. Guys get hard during waxes sometimes, you get used to it, and they're more embarrassed than you are usually. The 3rd time this guy came in, I was on my last few rows when all of a sudden he made a noise. I looked up and he had nut on his stomach. I very quickly did my last 3 or 4 pops with the laser, told him he was done, and left the room. I called my manager and told her what happened, and he was never seen from again. He didn't even tip me. Also, the amount of women that fart while you're waxing them is unbelievable. They always get so embarrassed, and I just have to tell them it happens all the time. You're clenching, holding your knees up to your chest for part of it. It's bound to happen sooner or later. That second guy, I think he did leave you a tip, OP. Just not a tip that you can use for anything, or even wanted. Story 15. Oh boy, are you guys in for a treat. I'm currently training as a beautician, and work part-time in a beauty salon, so I've heard plenty of horror stories. But the one my teacher told me was definitely the worst. She had a woman come in wanting a Hollywood, all hair gone. But she seemed nervous about it because she said she had really dark, coarse hair. She thought, sure, no problem. She's done plenty of Hollywoods before. There's nothing she hasn't seen. Or so she thought. My teacher leaves the girl to get ready, and when she comes back in, she notices a foul smell. She doesn't say anything and begins to go about the usual procedure of the wax. Remember I said the client had dark, coarse hair? Well, she had so much of it that my teacher never noticed that not all of it was hair. She applies the wax, pulls one strip, and immediately feels like she's going to pass out. Connected to the wax strip is a big string of dark brown goo. She said she disposed of the strip as quick as possible and tried to clean up the mess caused by the gunk coming from this woman's kitty. Then asked her what the hell was going on down there. Apparently the girl said she was too embarrassed to go to a doctor about it and thought if she just got it waxed, it would get it all out. Safe to say nobody in my class is too excited to start specialized waxing. Oh dear, don't be too embarrassed to go to doctors about anything, please. Doctors most of the time have legitimately seen it all. There's no point in being worried about it. In their schooling and just life for them, they've seen some worst case scenarios. What you've got going on isn't going to be the worst, and even if it is, they don't really care. They just want to help you. It's what they're there for. Story 16. My sister's an esthetician, and when she was in training, she had a woman come in for a Brazilian wax. She was prepping her for the waxing, which involved cleansing the pubic area with an alcoholic-based cleanser. As she did this, hundreds of crabs scattered from the woman's bush. Turns out the woman had no idea she had crabs and had to find out then that her husband was most likely cheating on her and had passed them on to her. This is probably one of the worst ways to find out someone's cheating on you, huh? Like, on the bright side, it was just crabs. On the downside, you got an STI or an issue down there from your husband cheating on you. That just sucks. Story 17. My waxing lady used to work in an actual salon but now works mobile. She had a dude come into the salon who wanted his back, sack, and crack waxed. As standard practice, she told him she would leave the room for a few minutes whilst he got undressed and positioned himself on the table. Upon her return to the room, she found the guy dressed in an adult diaper, bib, frilly hat, and with a dummy. He asked her if she would be his mommy. I think more stuff went down, but she didn't go into detail. I don't know if she can quit right away, but that's why she no longer works in a salon and only has clients she can trust. I don't know if she quit right away, but that is why she no longer works in a salon and only has clients she can trust. Story 18. My salon mentor told me about how when she was in school, they taught Brazilians because they were a big deal at the time. Sounded like they never actually demonstrated the act / really talked about how to react to an awkward situation. Her first client came in and was a bigger lady with a full bush who just got up on the table and spread her legs. She was wearing a dress and just let it all hang out there. Traumatized her a little at first, now it's funny to look back on. When I interned at a salon last year, the owner and I talked about what kind of waxing they did there. Brazilians were common, and she pointed out that a lot of people think that you need to have quite a bit of hair to wax. So naturally, everyone really grows it out before coming in. Well, we have to trim that before we can wax it, otherwise the wax pulls at the end of the hair instead of at the hair follicle. In her words, "You think it's weird letting someone see your junk? Imagine making small talk and someone having to take a small pair of scissors and trim your bush. Please trim beforehand." Story 19. I have seen more kitty than most playboys as a licensed waxer in New York for over a decade. I'm glad to say most clients willing to pay the price at spas I've worked at take very good care of themselves. However, there is this one client I will never forget. She was always dressed impeccably. She was an attractive 30-something professional with a great figure, her hair perfectly styled and dressed to kill. The cost of her handbag alone could exceed my monthly paycheck. The way she carried herself, you would think she had servants to bathe her each morning in rose water. Unfortunately, no one ever taught her the proper method of cleaning her privates. I never realized how much smegma cheese could build up in a month. Each month I wondered, it's only been a month. How could a girl so put together let so much crap build up? And why does the strip I pulled from her butt have so much brown on it? It's been over 5 years since I've worked on her, but I can still remember the result of her visit. She is the reason I keep baby wipes in the room, and I've made it a standard procedure to offer clients the option to freshen themselves before the treatment. Story 20. Here's one of my sisters while she was still getting her license. In her class, the teachers had the students work on each other for Brazilians. The teachers basically pleaded with the students to be thorough in their showers before the class, and offered wet wipes for those who wanted to go the extra step, which a majority decided to, but not my sister's subject. As soon as she stripped, my sister knew damn well she did not listen to the teacher's advice about showers or the wipes. She seemed to be a person who didn't care much for hygiene. When my sister waxed her pits, she gagged because of the smell. But that wasn't even the worst part. When she got to the butt, she pulled the wax and took a look at it. Along with the hair came a bunch of dark spots that just reeked, and I'm sure you guys can imagine what they are. Story 21. If we actually take things from this thread, 1. Shower and wash before going. 2. Use the wipes provided. 3. Don't go while on period. 4. Read reviews of the establishment. 5. Make the job as easy as it can be. 6. Don't get a wax if you can't stand the pain, heat, or embarrassment. 7. Listen to the person who is in charge of ripping hairs out of your privates. That's a lot of power, and you can make them like or dislike you by your preparedness and attitude. Well, I think a summation like this is a perfect place to end it. I agree with all of these tips. Not that I guess I have much say in the matter, considering I'm pretty confident I will never be going for one of these. Nor do I have the lady bits present in most of these stories. Hopefully just listening to these stories has helped you decide what to do beforehand. Best of luck, everyone. I hope you had a wonderful time watching this video, and I hope you have a wonderful day or night wherever you are. I will see you in the next one.